Welcome to Hitter Shit, your new segment spawned off of Rage Against the Mainstream podcast. This could be your new favorite source for album reviews.
Oh yeah, fucking yeah.
It'll take a little bit to get like the intro thing of this down like quite pat. I mean,
like South Park like uses that like deep voice, welcome to Hitter Shit. Get some fucking like Rocky intro music to it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, whatever.
So if you listen to this week's episode, you are already aware that today we are reviewing the September 17th, 2021 release from Carcass, Torn Arteries. This is their first album in 8 years. Last one was Surgical Steel. This album, I found out, was supposed to be released in August of 2020, but was set back due to COVID-19 pandemic.
They had an EP called Despicable that came out, and I remember everything leading up to that EP before it was released was a full length was coming. They released a single for one of the songs that's actually on Torn Arteries, which is Under the Scalpel Blade, which came out in 2019 as a single. Okay. So there was the hype about the album coming, and then this Despicable EP dropped in 2020. And it was kind of like confusion because there was constant to be announced Carcass new album, Carcass new album, Carcass new album. And then it got narrowed down to Despicable being the release. So even Torn Arteries was never really shown as like an upcoming album. Yeah. Because I think this was actually supposed to be released instead of this EP, but at least they gave us something because the Despicable EP is very good. Yeah. And obviously trying to keep from that break from Surgical Steel because even going before Surgical Steel, I mean, their last release was Swan Song in 1995. Yeah. And Carcass had been very good in releasing Necroticism in like 90, Heartwork in like 93, Swan Song in 95. I mean, they were very good and consistent, and then they had a huge gap between Swan Song and Surgical Steel. And honestly, like I remember when I heard Surgical Steel, man, I was a little disappointed. Several other bands did the same thing. At the Gates is one of the most memorable ones that had a strong gap, came back, played some really good fucking festivals, including Lock-In. And I was not a fan of At the Gates' new shit. And I still am not a fan. They just came out with something, I want to say this year or last year, that was not that good. Surgical Steel was good. I think this album, though, in my opinion, is better. I think, there's a lot to talk about with this album, but I think we should just, keep it as short as possible for the listeners and just kind of like narrow in on some of our finer points and misses, so to speak.
This album is an extremely quick listen. 10 tracks, you're under 50 minutes. Total runtime is 48:58. Yep. So literally you're on your lunch break at work. You could power through this album.
What kind of lunch break are you getting at work? I don't even get lunch breaks at work. I got to ask a staff member, like, are you cool to like watch this desk for a minute and then leave?
So, you got under an hour here, and it's one of those albums to where when you're listening to it, you don't feel the need to have to skip tracks.
It just flows.
It flows. It's, for me at least, it's a total, like return to form. I get Heartwork kind of vibes from this. It brings it back to a true form of the Carcass that I know. Yeah. Obviously it's the second album to not feature Michael Amott, who is obviously a fucking huge person in this whole thing.
Ironically enough, I think even without the Amott influence in it, they didn't fucking skip a beat. Because you gotta understand, like Amott, with the way Heartwork went into Swan Song, they were really heading down what he winded up doing in Arch Enemy.
Exactly.
And I like early Arch Enemy with Johan Leva and, the Black Earth and the Stigmata days and Burning Bridges. Like, there was a lot of good stuff in those early areas where he had just separated from Carcass and did what he did with Arch Enemy. But Torn Artery, like, I said this to you earlier when we were talking about it after, like, I told you to listen to it and, like, it was great and just give it a shot. And you listen to it. And the cool thing about Carcass is, man, there's so many bands where it's very hard to create a very specific vibe and sound. And I said this to you where when I listen to like especially most recent Carcass and the Despicable EP, Surgical Steel, and including Torn Arteries, even Heartwork at times, you feel like you're watching like a B-rated horror movie.
Yes,
in music,
that's
which is
the
cool.
type of feelings that it evokes. Yeah,
like Impaled, Ghoul, Exhumed, like they have that gore grind, gore metal. And you can feel it. Like it feels like, like a horror trailer to like an 80s B-rated movie. And it's just very fucking cool that Carcass has a very unique sound. And like I said, without Michael not being there, to me, in my opinion, they didn't skip a fucking beat.
No, absolutely not. Key track off of this album, at least for me, is Eleanor Rigor Mortis. I thought it was just incredible song.
Yeah.
I really don't have anything bad to say about this. David Castillo produced it. You might know him from Opeth Soilwork. He did the last couple Candlemass things and Dimmu Borgir.
Yeah, he was really heavy with like the black melodic metal, which is cool because what can be said and other reviews that I've been informed of is so Surgical Steel has a very, and I'm quoting a specific individual and saying a metallic sound, like a sharp edge sound. Like, and that's the thing, like Exhumed is also known for this, where they take like medical influence into their sense of like a science of like botched surgeries or shit like that. So like there's always like, the album's called Surgical Steel.
Yeah.
In this album called Torn Arteries, I think it is cool because you're transitioning from a more precise, sharp, polished sound to more of that. It's still very polished, but it's like a very grindy, like those guitars, that tone. Like I don't want it so sharp sometimes with these types of bands.
Like I said, it invokes feelings, or it brings you back to like Heartwork.
Yes. Yeah, I told you that immediately.
Production quality, I think, is right on par.
I was like,
you
were gonna like this because I know Heartwork's your favorite album by them, and I knew you would dig this album.
Yeah,
and like the flow of it, like it. The only thing I can say bad for it. One thing about these types of bands, you always need like a standout.
Yes.
And the way this album flows, it flows as an album. This isn't, it's so contradictory because like, again, there's certain albums where I'll only listen to them for certain songs, right? And more times than not, those artists wind up becoming compilation artists for me because I only like 3 or 4 songs or 2 songs off this album, 1 song off that. And, I'd rather look for a compilation or make a playlist to myself. This album, interesting enough, I feel like at any point, if I was going to listen to something off of here, I would just wind up playing the album.
Exactly.
Which is like a double-edged sword because there's nothing, again, standing out where I'm like, I'm taking this song and putting it to a playlist. The title track is great. The Torn Arteries track is great. The one song at the end, when I was telling you about this, it was really fucking cool, which is the Skies Remorseless Swing. With that very melodic, harmonied intro where it's like, I got very suspended animation, like John Petrucci vibes from the guitar work. The Under the Scalpel Blade song, the remaster of it's very good. Kelly's Meat Emporium is very good. My weakest track on there, and I think we both agreed on this, was In God We Trust.
Yes.
So those are very kind of like, and this is the thing, like the whole album, there is no really corny, boring moments. But then you set like such a monotone bar that anything that falls short of that, it's easier to notice.
Exactly.
And that song, when it came on, because on my the head unit I have, it immediately pops up with the song names. So when I was listening to it, I would look over real quick if I heard something like, oh, and I look at the song. Okay, that's what song that was. And when that song was on, I immediately looked. I'm like, buddy, you're not making the cut.
Yeah, right.
You're not making it.
So I would say, what do you want to do? Do you want to scale from 0 to 100 or 1 to 10?
I think we do a 0 to 100. I say, for all our listeners out there to kind of set the bar and know what to expect, anything under 60. Shit.
Hence the title of this, Hit or Shit.
Anything above 60. 60 and above. So 60 included is a hit.
So when I'm thinking, well, at least the way that I determine an album, I don't go by genre or, like the classification of the music. I go by total album, any genre, anything at all, period. I think a 65% for this album is, I think it's pretty sufficient. It's a hit. And I mean, there's not really anything that they could really do to like make it better.
Yeah.
I think like I said, with a couple standout tracks, there was nothing like that was like super crazy, innovative, like put you on the fucking edge of your seat type shit, but it wasn't a bad listen. And if I'm able to sit down and listen to an entire album and not have the millennial thing that makes you want to skip tracks,
Yeah.
then, deserves above 60 in my book.
Yeah. See, like, I'm the same way. Like, an album, if you're going to be like very good, and this is like where we'll disagree, like, The Doors I bring up, for instance, because they'll have like those hit songs surrounded by other songs that I like almost as equal as any of the songs that are like well known. Mm-hmm. Pink Floyd's the same way. Like a lot of the songs will get reputation because of how they're heard or like what's popular about it. But then sometimes people forget that if you actually listen to that album, you'll probably hear 4 or 5 songs that you never heard before because they're not constantly played on the radio that are just as good, if not better. Mm-hmm. That's when I can say an album for me is like that good, where even the songs that are getting absolutely no attention are just as good and give you that sense. And that's the reason. So I'm going to give this album a 70 out of 100. I will also say the reason why is because it's enjoyable. It's a brand of music that I like, and it's listenable, the whole album. If I start pushing in a 75, 80 territory, then I'm saying like this thing is going to be on repeat a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is that good where I've listened to it already, I think 3 times in its entirety in the couple days that it was out. But again, it's missing something just like to pop at you. It's missing something really like heart work, man. Like there was a lot of pop out moments for that album. Necroticism is my favorite Carcass album, and so many pop out moments. So just so many, and maybe Michael Amon had something to do with that. That's another thing.
Well, definitely had that pop element.
Yeah, you're missing like a real
pop
intricate level of talent with him. But yeah, I'll give this album a 70 out of 100.
So you heard it here. This is certified hit by Rage Against the Mainstream podcast. We'd like to thank you for tuning in to this week's installment of Hit or Shit. Find us on our social media accounts, facebook.com/RATM podcast, Instagram and Twitter @RATM podcast, and YouTube search Rage Against the Mainstream podcast. Until then, this has been an episode of Hit or Shit. I'm Bill.
I'm Steve.
I don't want to say have a good night, guys. Thanks for listening, but
enjoy the album.
Enjoy it. Go listen to it. Stream it. Buy it. Go
legally,
listen.
Whatever.
Yeah,
just listen.
We're not here to judge.
Yep. Water twig.
Later.